Jesse, how you doing?
Good. I've got a little bit of a new feud to report.
Ooh, who's this with? Is this with me?
Well,
I feel like we're doing pretty well lately, but if there's something to fight about, let me know. I'm ready.
If you and I ever have something to fight about, I'm going to take that straight to Twitter without letting you know. Let me send you a post from a friend of the pod. This is the source of the... Okay, so read that post for me.
All right, this is Ethan Strauss, House of Strauss. Wow. He posted this on Substack. Is it an insult to say Jesse Singal is surprisingly good at basketball? I don't know if that's an insult, but I don't believe him.
He also italicized surprisingly. So you didn't read it right. Is it an insult to say that Jesse Singal is surprisingly good at basketball? Hey, fuck you, Ethan. Are
you good at basketball? Because when I imagine you playing basketball,
yeah, go on.
I imagine you're on the ground like Moose when he wants his belly rubbed.
Crying.
Yes.
Rolling around because I twisted an ankle.
Cargo shorts around your ankles. Yeah.
Last night, it's a long story, but there was sort of like a weekly church gym game, and I got invited to fill in because You
went to church?
I went to church. You have to go to church and get baptized, and they let you in the game. And then basically everyone was like on vacation or injured or whatever. So I invited Ethan to join. It was me and him and just like two other guys. And I was annoyed at Ethan actually being surprisingly good at basketball.
Oh, really?
No, he is. I did not. And Ethan, I'd like to apologize. I'd like to say I will try to do better. I did not think you'll be good at basketball. And Ethan had a very consistent 3-point shot and was
really.
This is also another thing I can't say without sounding insulting. Surprisingly strong in terms of finishing at the rim.
It's surprising that anybody who does well on Substack is good at basketball, except for Sherman Alexie. He's on Substack, and also I think he played college basketball. Did you play? Did you ever play on like a sports, like an actual team?
Like rec league and like club in grad school, which is nothing. It's like a source of regret that I never...
You could be in the NBA now, or you could be an owner of an NBA team, more likely.
I probably would have been in the NBA if I had tried harder in high school. But no, I didn't even make my like high school team.
You tried out and you didn't make it? Oh, it's sad.
Well, it's a long story, but like high school Jesse...
This was before the growth spurt?
No, I was not good at effort. I was not good at applying myself at all. So I would just like... fuck around. I played a lot of pickup basketball. Actually, at this one playground in Brighton, Massachusetts, I still play it sometimes. And I never like tried.
Jesse had a playground. Seems like it should be illegal.
Yeah, a children's playground, like a preschool. I would just play with the kids. And yeah, I never put any effort into it. And I sometimes still think that if I'd really applied myself, I could have been a bench warmer because it was a high school with like 2,000 kids and we were pretty good and there were some actual athletes there. But
so I'm sort of impressed that you have the social skills isn't the word. Maybe like naivete is the word to just like go to a city and start playing basketball. I couldn't do that.
I mean, do you want to know how it actually happened?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Hold on. I'll send you this. This is actually kind of funny.
This is going to be a meetup.com/Jewish basketball.
Okay. So yeah, the way it usually works is you go to a new city and you find the park or the open gym where people play. And one of the nice things about pickup basketball is you can just show up. Like it's a genuine meritocracy. And this sounds lame, but like I did grow up in a pretty not diverse place. And some of the only diverse places I went were like pickup basketball courts where it really is like every type of person, not if you're in rural
women.
Illinois, except women who are not allowed. Although as I've gotten older, more and more women do show up for pickup runs and some of them can play. Although there's, even at a very low level, there's such a size problem there, but we can...
I've watched the WNBA before, yes.
No, WNBA's fine. I'm not going to... Anyway, so first day near where I'm living and where I'm sad to be departing soon, I hear squeaks, these characteristic squeaks of rubber on wood coming from a church gym I'm walking by. And there are these guys playing, and I'm like, oh my God, they're playing. I don't know a way in. I won't be able to play. I don't know anyone because you got to know a guy to get in. Every time I walk past this gym, every night there's basketball and sometimes pick up soccer. So what I do is I write up a note and I put it in a plastic thing, and this is what it says. Please read it.
Like you put this like in a plastic bag with like a rock in it and like threw it at the gym?
No, I put it in one of those, what's it called? Like a protector, like you put in a binder, a plastic binder. Yeah.
Hi, I recently moved here from the East Coast where I played pickup basketball 2 to 3 times per week. I'm hoping to find a regular run or two out here. I'm 6'4", 240 power forward type who doesn't need the ball much. My game has been described as not terrible. If your run has an open slot, please shoot me a text. Thank you. Huh. So you basically left a misconnection for a basketball team.
On the wall of the gym inside it. And
you're 240?
In New York, or closer to 250.
Damn.
In New York.
You're you're two of me. Literally.
I always pictured you as weighing 40 pounds.
I'm slightly
You
more.
weigh 120?
I'm like slightly more, but
listeners chime in with your weights in the comment. And I feel like in New York or Boston, if you put this up, it would have been pulled off the wall and torn to shreds immediately.
Yeah, there would have been somebody would have added a picture of your face with turf over it.
Well, no, I just mean turf. I don't mean that. I mean just like people are not as welcoming, but people in California are nicer. So it stayed up for weeks, and eventually someone messaged me. Eventually someone from another group messaged me, and I've been able to play a little. And that's how I, unfortunately, was not able to dominate Ethan Strauss, which would have been cathartic because I don't like him as a person.
Have you made friends doing this? Are these people you're going to, does this translate to actual friendships?
Men don't really make friends. So usually if there's a regular group of guys you play with, I mean, unless you know them from real life, no. But I've also only done this a couple times. But to me, it was an interesting example of genuine West Coast openness because I don't think this would have worked on the East Coast.
It wouldn't have worked in Seattle. It's famously frosty city.
Well, because no one plays sports there.
That's true. I'm quite impressed that you did this and that it worked. I'm going to try this myself with skateboarding, but my note will probably be I just moved here. I'm 42 years old.
Are you a kid under 12 who wants to hang out with me?
My style has been described as on the ground.
Katie.
Good work, Jesse.
Thank you. I'm really proud of myself. What else are we going to talk about today, Katie?
Today, we are going to Canada. There is a lot going on up there. In the U.S., I think it's fair to say that wokeness, we have already experienced, I think, what might be the last gasp of wokeness, but it persists in Canada, so we're going to go up there. But first...
Are we going to have to become podcast refugees where we put too many of our chips into anti-wokeness, so we need to travel the world looking for remaining pockets? We need to go to fucking New Zealand or something? Yeah,
New Zealand probably would, or at least Australia would probably be the place to do it. In the chat, let us know where the wokest places on Earth so we can go there. Okay, Jesse, before we get to that, I want to do a little bit of follow-up from our last episode. So this was about AI, specifically AI plagiarism, which is becoming a problem in the publishing industry. And while we were discussing that, you wondered how we were talking about Taylor Lorenz was being dragged online for using AI. Yeah. And one of the complaints was that it's such a power suck. She's poisoning Black communities by using it for dumb queries. And you wondered how one Google search compares to one AI query. Was that what your question was?
Well, yes, because my argument, and I wasn't sure this was right, was that if you do a good prompt that generates useful information, that's often worth 10 minutes of Googling around and gathering information yourself that the computer does almost instantaneously.
Okay, got it. Okay, so we got an email from a listener who said, I work for an AI startup and I've learned a lot about how these LLMs work. The reason these AI models use so much energy is because every single word is its own complex calculation. The model uses a massive vector database that scores words in relationship to others and then decides based on proximity to other words what comes next. So it's not just more than a Google search. It's literally every single word requires basically its own Google search worth of energy. I found that to be a compelling explanation, but I ran it by someone else I know who works in AI, and he said...
I just can't just say that the idea that every token, that every new is predicting the next token, that every one of those is equivalent to a Google search. I'm just skeptical of that. Maybe I shouldn't be, but tell me what the expert said.
Okay, so he said it's sort of right in spirit, but with a couple of qualifications. So for one, massive vector database isn't quite accurate framing. He said, quote, it's not really a database, it's a neural network with billions of parameters. I don't know what that means.
Different letters, and it'll be I started to learn the basics of this, and then I got distracted, but it's 15, 20,000 dimensional vector space, and just layer after layer. It's crazy how big it is, and it's very hard for us to wrap our minds around. That's why it's so powerful. Yeah.
He also said that, so our listener did mention that it uses these complex calculations, and he said that's accurate. it's not totally accurate to say that every word is its own Google search. It's like that's a good metaphor, but he's more of a shape rotator. So I think he was taking that sort of literally. He also explained that the bulk of energy usage is actually in training the models, not the individual queries themselves.
Yes.
And training really is a huge energy suck. So like that could be on par with a small city's annual usage, power usage. But for the user, so for you and I, if you do a direct comparison to a Google search, it really depends on the model. But today's AI models are somewhere in the range of 3 to 10 times more energy intensive per search. But again, it really depends on the LLM and the search. So asking a simple yes or no question uses much less energy than asking ChatGPT to create an image of your pergola with wisteria versus honeysuckle. Like that's the stuff that uses much more energy than like an average Google search.
I'm trying to figure out if what I'm feeling is a big appliance running below me or a small tremor, like earthquake-wise.
Interesting.
Huh. Well, I guess we'll find out soon. Nothing shaking at moment, but it was like noticeable. Yeah, I just think even just what, I'm not trying to be a nerd, but like even what you just said, the amount of energy it takes to train one model, a small city using energy over how much time? You mean to train?
A year.
Oh, so
like one large training run could be the equivalent of.
But what do you mean? What's a training run?
Okay, so I asked about this too. Each new version of GPT or Claude or Grok would be its own run. So it's the whole process of creating a new model, and it takes months. That's the biggest energy suck, not the individual user using the end product. But when millions of individuals are using an LLM or any kind of AI, that's also a fuck ton of energy in itself.
I think what bothers me is like there's this zombie statistic, for example, about how much water it uses that I think has been repeatedly debunked. And I just maintain that of all the things in this world of ours that use so much energy every day, and just the constant putter of scooters and cars delivering food, I just think a lot of the people who are being selectively angry about using this because they don't like the technology, not because it's a particularly useful thing to focus on to save the planet.
Yeah, so that water statistic, this was repeated in a book by, her name is, I believe, Karen Howell. Do you know about this?
Empire of AI, right?
Yeah, and the statistic was, she was off by a magnitude of something like
80 trillion.
Yeah, something like that. But it still gets, and this was corrected in later editions of the book, or later printings of the book. But I think the water thing is, yes, a little bit more complex and less evil than our sort of the popular understanding of it.
I also think I'm just biased against, I wrote about this once in the context of this online psycho who, if I'm remembering correctly, he was railing against like individuals for choosing to travel by air. Mm-hmm. I just continue to think that first of all this stuff has gotten way more complicated because renewable energy has caught on more than we thought it would. And like Texas is a leader in wind power. And I think a lot of the trajectories are maybe less dire than they used to be, but I just don't think it's ever going to come down to like browbeating individual people to use less energy, because people are going to do what's most convenient for them and they have legitimate reasons for that. And there's much more powerful actors who use a lot more energy and who have the power to act differently, basically. Right.
Well, if you're an American and your power is like, my power mostly comes from Bonneville Power, comes from hydroelectric. And, not to say that there aren't serious environmental concerns with dams. There obviously are, like the salmon are dying.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can we just, it's 2026. Let's be adults here. I think I've decided that dams are fine. Given all the alternatives, I know dams flood lands and like screw up some fishes. I know you're a little former grist staffer. I'm sorry. I'm pro dam, whatever you want. I've decided.
Look, I think dams are much more complex than that. And so like in the Northwest, the biggest issue with dams, one of the main issues is the salmon run. So salmon is a massive industry.
Oh no, the salmon.
It's not just I don't like salmon. Like I don't eat fish.
Salmon is overrated, by the way. Lox is not that good.
But you know who does eat salmon?
Bears.
Orcas. And so the orca population is being decimated in part because of these dams. So there are...
That's actually sad. I retract what I said about dams having no downside.
There's some like very tragic stories about orcas whose babies are dying, and they wear them like hats. They like swim around with dead babies like hats.
Oh, God.
It's very sad. So there are consequences to hydroelectric power, obviously. And there's a movement to take down some dams. But if you move from hydroelectric to fossil fuels, on net, I think the environmental impact would be worse. Where are we going with this?
Let's just build nuclear power everywhere.
Every person should have their own nuclear reactor. I'm very much in favor of that. Okay, so one other thing from that episode. So robust conversation in the comments there. And one person said this. I shouldn't do this, but this comment annoyed me, so I'm calling you out.
Just say it's Ethan Strauss if it's a bad comment.
This person also said that she thinks that you and I are using AI in our writing and not disclosing it.
I did see that. That annoyed me too. Oh, go ahead. We'll get to that.
If Jesse was using AI in his writing, it would be a lot shorter.
That's true.
So she also said, am I crazy, or did Katie in a previous episode straight up admit to running Drink Your Way Sober through ChatGPT? If I'm not mistaken, that's similar to what Mia Ballard claimed happened with Shy Girl.
Oh my God.
Jesse, do you think I did put my manuscript through ChatGPT, and I asked it based on the manuscript, how many copies it was going to sell. It was completely accurate.
Yeah.
100,000 in the first year. Completely accurate. Do you think that's the same as using ChatGPT to write your work?
Well, no, because the Ballard case was one where the ChatGPT words found their way into her book. Was this the one where she was like, it was my friend who done it?
Yes.
No,
this is not the same thing.
I saw one of the comments. I mean, we don't need to antagonize the commenters. We're choosing to antagonize the people we know who pay for the podcast. But yeah, one of them was like.
But this works really well for like Hassan Piker and Nick Fuentes. They are very, very shitty to their commentators, and they are much more popular than we are.
The two people we are hoping to model ourselves after. Yeah, I'll just say what I said before, which is I can't imagine passing off AI writing as my own. It would feel so weird just because so much of my identity is bound up with being a writer. Also, I don't think AI, even if I didn't have that massive moral and just sort of personal hang up about it, I don't think AI could do a better job producing my style of writing than I could anyway.
It's much
5,000 words when 1,500 would suffice. Yeah. So, but we'll see. Maybe you and I this time next year will have both. We'll be embroiled in scandal because it'll turn out this whole podcast was AI.
Or maybe we will be AI.
Or maybe we'll be dead.
One can only hope.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we get to the main event...
That felt jinxy to say that.
Yeah.
I hope people don't end up clipping that because we both... All right, continue. Die.
Before we get to the main event, Jesse, I saw you had a new piece out in the Dispatch that was creating some discourse.
No, yeah, it's not... Okay, so I just wrote... The sex and gender identity as a subject, I obviously have a love-hate relationship with it, and I'm obviously written about. I think the youth gender medicine thing is its own controversy, but there's been this conspiracy theory driving me crazy, in part because I'm one of the accused conspirators, which is that the trans backlash, which is real and has extended now to things like Kansas basically trying to change back trans people's driver's licenses, stuff that I think is well beyond sort of the mass of public opinion.
Yeah. There's also a really simple solution to the problem of gender markers on driver's licenses. Get rid of them. There was no gender markers on driver's licenses or passports until the 70s. You don't really... Like, I can think of rare cases where, like, someone goes to the hospital and they're checking the gender marker to find out.
Don't call it a gender. I mean, it's not. I hate the
sex marker. Sex marker. Yeah, sex marker. There's like very rare cases where you actually need to have your sex identified on a document like that. But it's a pretty recent invention. Is that the word? So you could just take them off. But I don't think that's the point in Kansas.
Yeah. Anyway, my piece was, there's this conspiracy theory that like the reason some people are mad about the trans sports thing or the youth gender medicine thing is some sort of conspiracy. So Graham Plattner, when he was asked
He's running for office in Maine.
Yeah. Graham Platter.
The one with the Nazi tattoo.
The mega Nazi. He's not a mega Nazi. Whatever. We don't need to get into Graham Platter or anything, but he basically said, like...
Just look, having a Nazi tattoo does not mean that you're a Nazi.
Clap emojis. There's this idea that he, out-of-state billionaires, that's why the transports thing comes up in Maine, or the other version of this conspiracy theory is like center-left pundits like me. We stoked this false controversy and this idea that it is like voters wouldn't really care about this issue. They've been bamboozled somehow. And I find that really disingenuous because transactivism for about a decade now has been trying to institute this maximalist version of self-ID. People are who they say they are. If someone says they're a woman, they're a woman. And transactivism, mainstream transactivism, hasn't brooked any exceptions to that. Where I am in California, this applies to changing rooms, to prisons. I talk about a case where, as a direct result of a law the ACLU pushed for, the ACLU, in defending this law that allows prisoners to move to the women's facility if they say they're women, in effect, they highlighted this one trans inmate who has now been accused of raping, a violent male offender who's now been accused of raping 2 women. So
wait, so the ACLU used this as a case where somebody should have been transferred to a women's prison?
This person, Tremaine Carroll, who they highlighted as like, this is one of the people who will be at risk if we don't let them go to a women's prison, they were later accused of raping 2 women. So the ACLU, pretty directly, caused, if these rapes happened, and there's some physical evidence, I think they did, the ACLU, this policy caused women to be raped. And this
was a person specifically who had not expressed a desire to change sex until this law passed that would have allowed him to be moved to a women's prison.
Yeah. And not only that, but the law had written into it, regardless of anatomy. It doesn't matter if they physically transitioned at all. It's wherever they feel more comfortable. Yeah. So this sort of puts me in a little bit of an angry mood because you, and by you I mean a lot of mainstream trans activists, I mean the ACLU of California.
You're pointing at me when you say that.
Oh yeah, I'm actually pointing. Is it ACLU of SoCal? I think it was ACLU of SoCal that highlighted this. You guys chose to push these policies and these priorities. That was what you did when you had cultural and political power. You thought it was very important that inmates, male inmates, biologically male, assigned male at birth, whatever you want, that they would be housed with prisons, that they would be housed in women's prisons, effectively no questions asked. That was your decision. And then people found out that that was the law you passed, and they got mad about it. To then be like, well, they're just mad because they're confused, or they're not educated, or the Atlantic is stoking anti-trans panic. I don't think it's anti-trans panic to think that a dangerous male should not be housed with women behind lock. Just how horrific that is, Katie.
Right.
You're putting a violent large male with women, locking them up behind, and they have no place to escape.
But Jesse, didn't you see Orange is the New Black? The Laverne Cox character did everyone's hair.
I'm not even saying before this. Apparently, the way California, they did it on a case by case thing, and especially for people who have physically transitioned. I don't want anyone to get raped. I don't want trans women to get raped. But the idea that the only options are trans women get raped or anything goes for any male offender who says they're female, they just get, and so the point of my article is no, you've made these issues more salient. People decided your takes were crazy and in some cases dangerous, and they didn't like them. And I think it's really irresponsible and a lack of any sort of accountability to be like, oh no, it's a conspiracy. It's also just really condescending to voters. And don't get me wrong, I think voters are dumb. I like being condescending to voters, but I think voters also have eyes and can So anyway, Chris Geidner, who's a LGBT writer type, formerly of BuzzFeed, he got mad at me, and I just sort of, he got mad at me on Blue Sky where he blocks me. He doesn't block me on Twitter. I was just like, I'd like him to say, I want him to get up on his little soapbox and say, I think this person, Tremaine Carroll, should have been housed with women. Even though they got raped, this was the right policy move. After he allegedly raped them, they did move him back to a male prison. I think Chris Geidner's view is probably that that's a civil rights violation. Why, even if it's an alleged rape, Katie, what's the argument Tremaine Carroll should not continue to be housed with women if you believe that Tremaine Carroll's a woman? There's none. He should still be in the women's prison, maybe separated from other women. So
women probably rape other women in prisons too.
There you go. For all my understanding is women probably rape way more people than men. I've been doing a lot of reading on this. So what really drives me crazy about people like Chris Geidner is they constantly cast moral aspersions at others, but they won't really answer follow-up questions or defend their own positions. They just block people, and they're on their little Substacks. I am too, but if people disagree with me, I'll address it. That move of what Chris Geidner's doing, of his position is wildly unpopular.
Yeah.
And he won't defend it. He's just, anyone's a bigot who disagrees. The 85% of America or whatever it is who doesn't think Tremaine Carroll should be housed with women he can then predict. I mean, it's just, I find it baffling. I also like this issue is just, sometimes I feel like it's sort of enough, but the dead enders on this are really crazy.
Did you listen to the Ben Kowaler series that we played the first episode of?
I've started it. I really like it so far. Yeah.
So it's called Strange Bedfellows. It's a 3-part series. And so we played the first one on our feed. I think the first one is good. I think the second and third one are even better. And it's interesting because, so it's like basically a story, like the recent history of this fight. And they have, like, in the third episode, they play all these clips from school board meetings. And I had kind of forgotten this had happened, where parents are reading from books that they want taken out of school libraries. And at these school board meetings, the parents are reading these books that their kids have access to. And at the school board meetings, the school board members are like, whoa, 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 whoa. That's obscene. That's obscene. And just to have that all in one place, I think is really helpful and will be in the future. When people are trying to memory hole everything that has happened. Yeah. And it's like strange, like this has all happened so recently, and yet I have forgotten so many of the nuances and the like small scandals of this larger debate.
Well, and in Loudoun, I mean, we talked about Loudoun County, but this was a prime example where like the school's own self-ID policies were a little bit out there, and, there was an alleged sexual assault, and then parents who had any qualms about this were portrayed as bigots, not only locally, but like Fifth Column ran some clips of like MSNBC pretending that this backlash in Loudoun, which a lot of it was from like sort of immigrant families, that it was some like white, like reactionary or almost white supremacist uprising. And it was
probably mostly Atlantic writers in Loudoun County who were complaining.
Yeah, exactly. I've found this whole, and again, I have a little bit of fatigue about it, to be honest, but, You can't spend 10 years pushing a very specific set of policies and then complain when people don't like them. It's just there's a cowardice and a lack of accountability to it that I don't like.
Yeah, there was one moment that actually made me quite happy listening to Strange Bedfellows. Do you remember what happened after Jenny Flynn Boylan signed the Harper's letter?
Yes, she got dogpiled, and she basically apologized. And then I highlighted that she'd apologized, and I got dogpiled for highlighting her dogpiling, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, so she's a New York Times writer. And when it turned out that J.K. Rowling had also signed the Harper's letter, and Jessie Single, maybe, although yours wasn't the name that came up.
I think she was more responding to Rowling in that case.
She like disavowed it, and Ben interviews her for the series, and she says she regrets that. And so it does seem like there's been some progress, but not much.
Well, I mean, look, and I mentioned there was like a Jeremy Peters article. Nick Confessor and Jeremy Peters both did good investigative pieces about different aspects of this, but the Jeremy Peters article was about how people in the movement are like, maybe shouting people down and calling everyone a bigot hasn't worked. I think that's a lesson learned too late, but there's still people who haven't learned it, and there's people in progressive politics who I respect who earnestly think they'll be able to get away with just not addressing this issue or changing the subject when it comes up in upcoming elections. They might be right. It could be Trump is so bad, and believe me, I think Trump dwarfs all this other stuff, but I think there's a level of cowardice and political malfeasance in 2021. This is the issue you want everyone to talk about. Trans issues are huge. 2026. Wait, what? Who said anything about trans issues? It's cowardly.
I saw another example of that in the New York Times. This was a video. This is a New York Times editor named Nadja Spiegelman, and she's interviewing these two cultural critics. Their names are Brock Collier and Amanita So.
Brock I had known as a party reporter, excellent writer, but his thing at New York Magazine is like he'd do these really good dispatches from like parties and cultural events, or I think he went by they, them now, but appears to have transitioned to female.
Yeah, so now a trans woman. So people might recognize Brock's work from a piece in New York Magazine in 2025 called The Cruel Kids Cable. And this was about young conservatives at like partying at the Trump inauguration. So let's watch the video.
I wanted to play a game where I'm going to say a word, and you guys are going to tell me if it is alive, dying, or dead.
Sounds great.
Let's do it.
Okay. Problematic.
Dead.
Should die. Should die.
Okay.
But it's around. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's around, but it should die.
Triggered.
That one's going to come back. It's going to come back, but it's dead.
I still see quite a bit of that, especially on the internet, which is really disturbing because it's like trigger warning, and then here's a video of like some horrifically violent thing. Like the word does not work.
It's why I love it. I'm just like, thank you for triggering me with the trigger.
Yes.
It's like the reaction came 10 seconds before. So I love it.
Microaggression.
Dead.
Okay. Safe space.
Dead.
Dead.
Folks with an X.
Dead.
Never alive.
Which, I mean, that one was ridiculous. I mean, talk about a ridiculous, like that really makes me so mad. Like, it makes me, because I know people who have like dutifully and earnestly used that. And it's like, oh my gosh.
So this is a small part of the entire conversation. I'll post the link in the show notes, but the opinion section, they have a podcast called, I think it's called New York Times Opinion or Opinions. And so the entire episode was the three of them discussing the question, is wokeness dead? But just, I did listen to the podcast, but Jesse, just based on this clip, what do you think?
I mean, yeah, I think it's reflective of the fact that era is mostly behind us. And you know, I think there's always going to be a little bit of pulling punches when sort of cool kid cultural critics talk about this stuff. I think they won't be able to talk about just how crazy and bad things got in progressive spaces, but this is clearly where we're at. Now, Blue Sky, you can look at it in two ways, one of which is like it doesn't really matter because it's so sequestered from reality and not a lot of people are on there. I do think the people who are on Blue Sky are getting increasingly radicalized, and like the conspiratorial thinking on there is really bad. But yeah, I think this time segment reflects the genuine cultural center of gravity, even in liberal elite spaces right now.
Right. The vibe has shifted. I wish that she had asked about the term non-binary. Like when that...
Because to get Brock's thoughts on it.
Well, just look, when people can admit that non-binary is and has always been a very silly concept, then it will be truly dead. I'm not sure that moment will come because this still seems...
Yep. Brock had written, I think it was this essay. I'll drop it in the show notes. Brock had like been sort of presented as like, I think as somewhat, you tell me if this is right. I'd say like presented as sort of a twinkie male who liked to dress up in women's clothing. Like genuinely gender bending, and I had written pretty honestly about some of this stuff, and it jumped out at me because like there was a piousness to so much of the writing about gender identity. Right. Like, how dare you question it? And from what I recall of Brock writing about their own gender identity, I guess now Brock managed to actually like have a little bit of insight and a sense of humor about it, and be like, you know, I haven't read the piece in a while, but people should read it. I'll be curious what they think. I don't want to like try to remember exactly what was in it.
Right. And I don't want to hold Brock up as like an exemplary of wokeism who has sensed the vibe shift and changed. I don't think that's true.
No, just to be clear, that's not what but that's not what I was saying. Yeah, sorry.
Right. No, I don't think that's true. And I know that's not what you're saying. If you look at so Brock is partly a profile writer. If you look at who Brock has profiled, like Caroline Calloway, Dasha Nekrasova. These are people, Honor Levy, these are people who, during the heyday of wokeism, even profiling platforming people like that would have been considered a grave sin. So I don't think like this video is indicative of like a full 180 on the part of two incredibly woke writers, but I do think it shows you that I don't think the New York Times would have done this piece just a few years ago, but very clearly the vibe has shifted. And yes, elite institutions like the New York Times have realized that. The thing that annoys me about it is, like, I've been saying this shit for 10 years. You know what I mean? And so it's like, on the one hand, I'm like, I'm glad that this shit is dying. Although part of me does miss it because it like gave me so much of something to bristle against, and I like being annoyed. Now I have to go to Canada to be annoyed. But I also like, like now the stuff we're in to be annoyed or angry at is much more serious and scary because it affects the world. It's almost safer.
look, the stuff from 2020 was very real. Like, friends of ours got fired and had their reputations ruined over bullshit. And I think it probably literally set back scientific progress. Just the politicization of so many areas of science probably set back progress for years. It was bad. But it was also like bad in a different way than what's going on now, and easier to podcast about.
Right, but I don't think you can untangle one for the other. Obviously, cause and effect is extremely hard to prove in this case, but I remain convinced, maybe just based on vibes, that the excesses of wokeness are in part what led us to the excesses of anti-wokeness.
Maybe.
It's just this pendulum swinging back and forth.
Anyway, just to give Brock credit where it's due, in 2022, then identifying, I believe, still as non-binary. By 2018, I was eager to join in on the hype and decided to...
Wait, what are you reading
This is the New York Magazine article I referenced that there's a link to in the show notes.
Okay.
By 2018, I was eager to join in on the hype and decided to start identifying as non-binary. At that moment, it felt sexy and radical, like I discovered a shiny new paperclip in the lip. What's a paperclip in the lip?
Is that a lip ring? I don't know.
God, we're so old. I also smoked cigarettes, painted my nails black, and listened to a lot of Bowie, Rebel. This, too, was kind of a punk provocation. So I think all those of us who have a little bit more of a sense of humor about identity, or who view it as actually fluid and constructed, which a lot of people... or a lot of the mainstream voices in the trans movement say it's fluid and constructed, but don't actually think that. They actually think it's this deep essentialist thing. I think all of us were asking was like more of this kind of thing from Brock Collier, of like acknowledging this shit is complicated and there is a political element to it.
And acknowledging that it's funny.
It's funny. There's nothing wrong. And
it is funny.
Can I just say, like, dude, and the sort of the photo they used of Brock in this Cut article, I think I would have hoped in 2000 that in 2026, like, male presenting people wearing women's clothing should be the norm.
I want to see you in like a little skirt.
I would really be able to pull that off. No, but like that's like
show some leg. You probably have really long legs, or are you like all torso? I could see that.
My legs are actually 5'8".
Wow.
And then the people who haven't seen me in person don't know this. The rest of my body is just the remaining like 8 inches. Like, I just think it all got so essentialist and so sort of mystical and religious, whereas traditionally gender bending people, and I'm not brave enough to be gender bending, I'm very gender nonconforming, they had a sense of humor about it.
But would you want to be? Like, do you have any desire to be gender bending?
But I also like I don't feel like I just wear what I'm supposed to wear. And I'm supposed to wear jeans. That's the most I've thought it through. You have a little bit of
You're supposed to wear cargo shorts.
You have a little bit of an aversion to wearing like dresses and stuff like that.
Wouldn't say it's a little bit of an aversion.
You have an aversion.
It's a giant aversion, and it's one that I've had since childhood.
Yes, because you're a trans guy,
right? But no, you're right. I mean, there was a like Bowie was playful. The people yelling at you about getting Prince playful, right?
Yeah, and I genuinely, like, if you'd asked me, I wanted that to be where we were headed, but we actually ended up in, I mean, we're sort of, it's hard not to repeat yourself when talking about this issue, but at its peak, it was extremely essentialist. It was literally that male is wearing a dress, they must not identify as male, which is the exact opposite of where we wanted to get.
All right. Before we move on, I just want to go back to the podcast real quick. So the episode is called Did Wokeness Leave Us Worse Off? I recommend people listen to this, although you, like me, you might be a little annoyed that people are speaking up now, like, where were you when I was getting dogpiled for saying Latinx is dumb? But I kind of thought that the panelists would say, yes, woke is dead, but they actually didn't. They said it's transmogrifying, it's evolving.
Do they use that word, transmogrifying?
No, they don't, but they should have.
They should have.
It's a good word.
Do better.
Yes, it's transitioning. And, these are people who live in Brooklyn. They're already in these very elite, rarefied...
Do you mean in the, like, spiritual sense, or do they all actually live in Brooklyn?
Brock Collier does live in Brooklyn. I don't know about the other two. So let's say metaphorically and maybe literally live in Brooklyn. But regardless, they're in these very elite leftist circles. So maybe it just depends on where you live. I mean, what's your observation, Jesse? Do you think, like, I guess you mostly hang out with normies, but do you think they're, like... When I say woke is dead, I mean, am I just too online? Am I not spending enough time at Brooklyn brunches at the co-op?
I mean, obviously, we hang out in somewhat similar circles.
No, my circle is like 85.
You don't have a circle. Yours is a point.
No, I do have a circle. They're just extremely old.
Yeah, it's sad.
We mostly talk about health problems and arthritis.
It's obviously mostly dead. I will say the to my mind, very understandable reaction to Trump has brought back or re-energized certain aspects of it, like just certain forms of oversimplified or like essentialist thinking. But yeah, I think obviously with the exception of Blue Sky, it seems like it's mostly gone. It could come back. Like people have illiberal impulses and they like to divide the world into us and them, et cetera, et cetera. It's all part of human nature. The rich tapestry. That
will probably never change. What I have seen is a shift in what people care about and the sort of PC causes. Like, in the last few years, it's been heavily on race and gender. And now we're seeing Middle Eastern politics. People are all of a sudden experts on that. And economic issues are, I think, more like people like Mondami not running as much as on identitarianism as on sort of more bread and butter socialist issues. So that seems to be a change. What I'm not seeing as much is successful cancellation campaigns. And by successful, I mean like people getting fired from their jobs. With one exception, if you have ever emailed Jeffrey Epstein, watch out.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, everyone's been canceled because media is dead.
Yeah, and Twitter is dead. Well, Twitter is also transmogrified into a place where Go ahead.
To a place where what?
Well, just to a place where there just aren't that, like the cancelers are mostly gone. They're on Blue Sky and they're on echo chamber. And so they're not doing the work of canceling, of trying to get people fired from their jobs.
I mean, there's like constant attempts at stirring up outrage against individuals on both X and Blue Sky. I think it's probably harder than before to get people fired. And the whole thing feels a little bit perfunctory and exhausted, like just many years past peak.
Yeah, let's bring it back. Who should we cancel?
Ethan, for saying I'm good at basketball. It's fucked up.
Surprisingly.
Surprisingly.
Okay. Should we move to the last bastion of wokeness? Head north?
Yeah, we should probably do housekeeping first.
Yeah. Will you do it?
Yes. This is a half gender conforming podcast. Blocked and Reported. You can find us on Apple Podcasts. You can rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. The best way to support us is put on a dress. If you're a guy, just put on a dress. See how it feels. You can do it in private.
Hose. I want to see
us a photo. Ethan, I hope you're listening. I want to see how you look. What else? Best way to support us is to become a premium subscriber. blockedandreported.org. That gives you access.
And you also
what?
Sorry.
No, say it. You're going to say something about me in a dress. Okay. You're going to be transphobic.
No, I was not. No, I was not going to say anything about it.
Go ahead.
He's wearing a skirt right now. People can't tell, but he actually is. It's got fucking cargo pockets on it.
I decided to compromise and I dressed.
It's a skirt.
As a woman in Saudi Arabia. So I'm dressed as a woman, but it's the opposite of revealing.
That is my ideal look.
Oh my God. Can you imagine how liberating that must be to just not have to worry about like how your face looks and stuff?
I think that is what, when I think of women in Saudi Arabia, that is the word that comes to mind is liberated.
Liberated. Free. Yeah. They don't have to worry about the male gaze. Okay, I think that's enough for housekeeping.
The male gaze, I've never really been concerned about the male gaze. Like this is something that doesn't. I think I'm invisible to men.
Aw, Katie.
Yeah, the gaze that I do think a lot about is the mother-in-law gaze. That one is.
Is it harsh?
Much more dangerous. Much harsher. All right, Jesse. So let's start with a tweet. Will you read this one?
Samantha Smith says, MMIWG2SLGBTQQIA+. The Canadian government just dropped this absolute monstrosity, and no, it isn't satire.
And then Elon Musk reposted that and said Canada is cooked. And this has, wow, when I looked like an hour ago, it had 67 million views. Now it has 70.3 million views. So this continues.
Look, not every country has the benefit of Elon Musk steamrolling into its government and fixing everything the way we did.
So there's a video embedded here. Let's watch it.
Deal with the ongoing genocide of MMIWG2SLGBTQQIA+. This is abhorrent.
All right, so you can see why this went viral. It's funny.
Because it's funny.
It's Canada. And, personally, it does make me a bit nostalgic for the heyday of woke nonsense, which we were just disparaging. Robin DiAngelo, I miss you. Come back to me. But John Kay, our Canadian friend, who himself is no fan of gender wang, as he called it, he posted a reality check. So he explained that the speaker here is a woman named Leah Gazin. She's a member of the parliament for the NDP. That's the New Democratic Party. Now, this is a very marginal party in Canada. In the last election, they won just 2% of parliamentary seats. It was their worst performance in history. they did so poorly, they actually lost official party status. So you have to have 12 seats for official status. They only hold 7. And there's been this battle going on within the NDP for the heart and soul of the party. And the question is basically, is the NDP going to be this kind of ultra woke identitarian fetish party that everyone makes fun of? Or are they going to be a genuine workers' party where you aren't, publicly shamed for using the wrong pronouns? And people might have seen these other videos that recently went viral from the NDP convention where party delegates are complaining that their equity cards were ignored. So basically, they had some rules in place that allowed cool identities to speak before uncool identities. And so there were videos of like a brown woman with a keffiyeh and a black woman with a face mask complaining that their equity cards were ignored and other people were permitted to speak before them. It's very 2020. And there was one clip of a non-passing trans woman complaining that a cis woman was allowed to speak first. That one was particularly funny. Have you seen this one, Jesse?
No.
Okay, let's watch this.
I'm sorry, just real quick, point of personal privilege. I understand there's very little time and for delegates to speak, but early on the mic, it's hard as a racialized and transgender delegate to sometimes use this card and speak to somebody in front of me in line and ask, hey, this pertains to multiple intersecting parts of my lived experience. I'd like to speak. I was rejected when I talked, and it's frustrating when these are my rights being directly under attack right now in Alberta, and that a cisgender woman had spoken over me. And I understand her rights are important too. This pertains to her too, but I don't know. I hope that in the future the federal NDP will also have a broader interpretation of the equity cards for speakers. That's all. Thank you.
I will invite delegates to assist me in better using the card by forming a straight line behind the microphone with a prominently displayed equity card. If I see speakers ahead of you who are not holding a card prominently, it would be wrong of me to guess about their gender identity.
This is all just like that DSA clip that went around.
Yes.
It's like the same thing.
Do you want to explain that?
Well, yeah, there's some like DSA convention, and the years are really blending together. I would say 2019, 2020. That just involved a lot of like snapping, and there were warnings about people wearing perfume that could cause health problems, and there was more pronoun stuff. Yeah,
like a delegate, a male, a male trans woman complain, like you could see the bulge in this person's outfit. That video.
I don't remember the bulge, but you do, Katie.
I can't forget the bulge.
Katie, you're genitally
I'm always
obsessed.
Thinking about bulges. So that's the NDP. And Leah Gazan is very much on the side of keeping the NDP stuck in this woke mire. But that side does appear to be on the wane. So like the new leader of the party, his name is Avi Lewis. He's much more of an economic leftist and an identitarian. For one, he follows cursed cancellations on Instagram, which tells you something.
Cursed? Did you say cursed?
It's cursed.
Oh, is it? Is that how they pronounce it?
No, it's cursed. And we've discussed this before. I was corrected. And more to the point, today, the NDP's platform is more about progressive taxation, a national rent cap, free public transit, a Green New Deal, government-owned grocery stores. It's more about shit like that, material things, than it is about micro-racism and trans genocide. I'll post a link in the show notes to a piece by our friend Jay Soleil about this. He's a communist pig, but he's also an astute critic of identitarianism in Canada and elsewhere. And he thinks that the current NDP is righting the ship. But yes, Leah Gazan is a dead ender. And yes, she is in government. That's true. But she doesn't represent the government of Canada any more than, say, Bernie Sanders represents the government of the United States. She's very fringe. So this annoyed me because it's like, Elon Musk, Canada is cooked. Well, this doesn't actually represent Canada. This isn't actually the Canadian government. This is a fringe figure.
Hashtag not all Canadians.
Exactly. And I am a Canada stan. I love Canada. And John Kay, he also said this. He said, quote, CBC types treat her as a serious person because she's Indigenous and because she always talks in the tear-drenched idiom of white settler colonial evilness, but she's not. So that's the first thing. It's like just reality check here. Like it's not true that the Canadian government dropped this monstrosity, as the original poster that went viral said. One minor MP dropped this monstrosity and 70 million people are making fun of it.
So I didn't even recognize most of those letters. What does the acronym stand for?
Yeah, so the acronym MMIWGS2LGBTQIA, yes, it sounds like the name of a Polish death metal band, or like what is it that the QAnon acronym, where we go one, we go all? It's like that. It's actually a mashup of two different things. So everyone knows 2SLGL, so everyone knows 2SLGBT, it's so hard to say, 2SLGBTQIA+. That's two-spirit, lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer, questioning, intersex, asexual, and plus size. Are you going to laugh at that?
It's pretty good. It's okay.
Thank you. But MMIGW, that refers to missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and she smushed them together as one very long acronym. So this is not a new sexual identity or gender orientation. This is two separate long-ass acronyms smushed together. And now, I mean, to her point, is it fair to say that there's an ongoing genocide of the MMIWGS2L? No, obviously, although technically sort of yes, because in 2019, the government sponsored it was called the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. This was a report commissioned by the government, and that report did officially conclude that the violence against First Nations women constitutes a genocide. But John Kay, he explained it like this. Jesse, will you read this tweet?
The problem of violence against Indigenous women is a real and tragic issue. Unfortunately, a couple of years ago, a bunch of activists produced a ridiculous report on that subject that called it a continuing genocide and demanded that we call it that. The whole movement collapsed when it was pointed out that something like 80% of the Indigenous women who are killed by Indigenous men, which is very much off message from the whole white colonial G-word thing. But the acronym still gets name dropped when people are indicting Canada for all its infinitely genociding of everyone.
I looked this up, by the way, and it is true that First Nations women are victimized at much higher rates than women of other races. But John actually underestimated the rate at which the killer is Indigenous. So according to Statistics Canada, this is a government bureau, between 2014 and 2021, 86% of people accused of killing an Indigenous woman or girl were themselves Indigenous. And this is this should be expected because that's generally how it works with every race. White women are most likely to be killed by white men. Black women are most likely to be killed by black men. Hispanic women by Hispanic men, etc. And this is simple. The leading perpetrators of murder are intimate partners, and most women date within their race. The murder industry is highly segregated. So just some nuance on that. It's not the government of Canada speaking in that video. It's one loony Canadian. But for another Canadian story that does appear to be more legit and more institutionalized, Jesse, please read this tweet.
The University of British Columbia just posted a job for a tenured professor of forestry. There were 6,125 wildfires across Canada during 2025 with almost 22 million acres burned. Salary $120K to $150K. For this quote, for this position, applicants must identify as having a disability.
Okay, so this is Chris Burnett tweeting this, and he's like an anti-woke, right-wing culture warrior type. I don't find him a particularly trustworthy source, but here he does have the receipts. So this is a job listing from the University of British Columbia. This is the Department of Forestry and Environmental Stewardship, and they're hiring an assistant or associate professor. This is the job listing. He also posted a link to it, so we can go right to it. So, Jesse, I want you to read this from the job listing itself.
In accordance with UBC's CRC Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Action Plan and pursuant to Section 42 of the BC Human Rights Code, this search is restricted to people with disabilities. We welcome applications from disabled scholars who are also members of the following federally designated groups: Indigenous peoples, racialized people and women, and gender equity-seeking groups. Applicants to CRC positions are required to complete this equity survey. Okay,
so there's a link to the equity survey. So again, this is something that you have to fill out before applying for the job. Let's just take a look at that.
Oh, we can fill it out.
Yeah, we can fill it out. So the survey starts with gender. So Jesse, select the option that you identify with. Let's read the options here.
Woman, man, gender fluid, prefer not to answer, non-binary, trans man, trans woman, two-spirit. I don't identify with any option provided.
Very broad. All right, next one. Select the sexual orientation that best describes how you currently think of yourself. Read those.
Asexual, bisexual, gay, heterosexual, lesbian, pansexual, queer, two-spirit. Don't identify with any option provided. Prefer not to answer.
Okay, and then they ask if we identify as Indigenous. Next page is asking if we're visible minorities. Do you identify as a member of a visible minority in Canada? No, visible minority refers to whether a person belongs to a visible minority group as defined by the Employment Equity Act. The Employment Equity Act defines visible minorities as persons other than Aboriginal peoples who are non-white in color. Jesse, you yes or no?
No.
Okay. So other than Aboriginal who are non-white in color. And then it's asking what population group we're in. So this is ethnic group, Arab, Black, Chinese, Filipino, Japanese, Korean, Latin American, South Asian, Southeast Asian, West Asian, white, population group not listed. And then it asks us if we identify as a person with a disability. And disabilities include any impairment, including a physical, mental, intellectual, cognitive, learning, communication, or sensory impairment, or a functional limitation, whether permanent, temporary, or episodic, or evident or not, that in interaction with a barrier hinders a person's full and equal participation in society. That's a lot. What do you have a disability, Jesse?
I mean,
according to this metric?
If I was under oath, I'd say according to that I do, but for these purposes, I would say no.
What's yours? Do you have long ADHD?
I do have ADHD. That's an impairment.
I've no question there. So this is not a position, a job that has anything to do with disability. Not that I think that you should have to be disabled to teach in any department, like including like disability studies. But this job is in forestry, and you obviously shouldn't have to be able to use a chainsaw to teach in a forestry department. But requiring someone to have a disability seems pretty freaking limiting of the candidate pool. So my guess is that they'll get some cis white man with a beard and an axe who absolutely swears that he has invisible disabilities. Maybe fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue.
That seems like the most likely outcome, yeah.
And this is perfectly legal in Canada, by the way. It's basically affirmative action for people with disabilities. In the United States, this would not be legal.
No.
What do you think about this sort of thing?
Yeah, it's obviously like a form of identitarianism we find really weird. I don't know, like filling this out, it's like going back in time to 2020 or whatever, but I guess it's Canada, and Canada's always about 6 to 50 years behind us in terms of technology and culture.
That's true. They're just getting COVID there now.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think to Americans who don't pay much attention to Canada, I don't think any Americans pay much attention to Canada, certainly not as much attention as Canadians pay to the US. These examples, MMI, WS2, 3 Spirit, whatever, these NDP delegates complaining about their equity cards, this job listing requiring that somebody have a clubfoot to get a job as a forester, all of this makes Canada look like a ridiculous place. But I think just so that we do our jobs correctly, we should also be really clear. I talked about this a little bit with John Kay when he was on the show, but Canada's government, current government, the new prime minister, his name is Mark Carney, is pretty centrist. Mark Carney he's a centrist liberal. He was a banker. He's not ideologically a radical. He's a technocrat. He governs from the center. He's much more moderate than Justin Trudeau was. And he was elected in no small part because of Donald Trump, because Donald Trump has antagonized Canada so much that what might have been there was so much backlash to the Trudeau government, the Conservatives had a much better chance in the last election of taking the majority. But the backlash to Donald Trump meant that the Liberal Party candidate got elected. But again, he is a centrist. So I am glad that some places in Canada are holding it down. They are staying woke because it gives us something to make fun of. But I don't want to pretend that any of this is representative of Canada as a whole, even if this job listing comes out of a public university, which, to be clear, it does. Like, a lot of these things have been institutionalized, but still, at this moment, the ruling party, the ruling class, is pretty moderate.
I mean, but Canada's probably cooked for other reasons, but that's like the classic thing of just taking one crazy, it's like the libs of TikTok approach, where a crazy teacher says, this is different because they're actually in government, but yeah.
If the places where Canada are cooked, like my aunt was telling me about a friend of hers who has a place in Tofino, which is this beautiful seaside town on Vancouver Island, and they just got their property taxes, and their property taxes are $65,000. So if Canada's cooked, I think it's because of that.
Yeah.
Not because of the NDP.
Thank you for that, Katie. Anything else?
No, but we just got an email headline, Minneapolis debating whether to allow gay bathhouses again. We might have to look into that.
I think we are. The other breaking news as we wrap up is that former New York Mayor Eric Adams was just granted Albanian citizenship.
Really?
So yeah, we're definitely.
Why?
I don't know.
Is this honorary citizenship, or is he moving there?
Well,
you know what? This makes sense because when I look at him, I say that is a man with Albanian ancestry.
we must have a pretty robust extradition agreement with Albania. Because that would be one explanation, that there's like more shit coming down the pipeline. But maybe he just likes Albanians. I mean, who doesn't?
Who doesn't?
Thank you, Katie. This has been Blocked Reported. As always, we are produced with help from Jessica the 80s Baby. Thank you for listening. Bye.
Bye.